Love Hurts. Released February 7th, 2025. Directed by Jonathan Eusebio. Written by Matthew Murray, Josh Stoddard, and Luke Passmore. Starring Ke Huy Quan, Ariana DeBose, and Mustafa Shakir. Rotten Tomatoes score, 19%. Metacritic, 35. IMDb, 5.4. MPA rating R. Welcome back to Real Reviews. Like always, I am your host, Lee. Today we are talking about Love Hurts, the most recent Ke Huy Quan film and the directorial debut of Jonathan Eusebio. It is an action, romance, comedy that reviewers seem to not be fond of, but let's talk about it. So Jonathan Eusebio is a stuntman turned director, much like Chad Stahelski, and in a lot of ways this movie could be compared to John Wick. On that note, the stunt work, especially the cable work, is done really well. All of the action scenes are laid out well, and the fights use the whole set that they are in at any given time. Each character is given a different way that they approach fighting. I don't think that Eusebio got the best out of each and every actor working on this film, but I do think that he could have started off with a much worse project. Writing is a different thing entirely. I'm only somewhat familiar with one of the writers, Josh Stoddard, who also wrote for the show Warrior. The story of this movie isn't the problem. It is simple and a bit cheesy, but it isn't really bad. If you saw the trailer or are familiar with John Wick, Red, or The Beekeeper, you get the idea. A guy got out of extremely dangerous work and started living a normal life until he was dragged back in. The only different angle is that there are 3 love stories, one about rekindling what was lost, another about fixing what you have, and the last about finding something new. While all 3 of those storylines technically pay off as in they are concluded, they are very weak stories. The dialogue is a bit rough as well, like it is super cheesy. Like weird crap that people say is teenagers trying to sound cool. This includes the poetry that one character wrote. I don't think that they ever really got the comedy aspect of the movie to work. While I laughed a few times, I certainly didn't find enough of the movie funny. The acting is actually not that bad overall. Ke Huy Quan is pretty good as Marvin Gable. He is able to hop between the kind of goofy characters that some might have grown to love into a more serious character pretty easily. Another thing about him that helps make his acting feel more natural is that he does all of his own stunts and is proficient in martial arts, and it shows. You don't get those weird moments where you can notice it as a stuntman. I am not sure what the goal was with Ariana DeBose. It kind of feels like they decided to make it a love interest and just added the character, and it seems to certainly reflect within her acting as she comes off as mostly just deadpan, like there is no life to the character. Mustafa Shakir as the Raven might have been my favorite performance. I know him from Outlaw Stars Jet, and he is honestly pretty delightful. I feel like a lot of the comedy ended up on his shoulders, and while the character seems so deadpan, his delivery of lines works so well. One missed opportunity in my mind is Cam Gigandet, who plays Merlot, a kind of sleazy underboss. While Cam isn't a powerhouse actor, he has a decent range and can certainly deliver when needed. The single best acting is Sean Astin, but he is in, I believe, literally 2 scenes. The protagonist works well because Ke Huy Quan really commits to both aspects of the role. The side characters are also pretty delightful. Like I said, I thought that Mustafa Shakir was one of my favorite performances, and the character just worked. The antagonist, however, is pretty terrible. I am not sure what direction was given, but even when the character is doing something violent, nothing about him seems intimidating, and his motivation is so flimsy that he just seems unneeded. There is almost no way that this movie would have felt drawn out. It is barely over 80 minutes long. In fact, this movie could have used a bit more time to develop some of the characters and giving an additional scene or 2 to some of the side stories. The effects in this movie are a bit rough, but luckily not used frequently. When they are fighting and there is blood splatter, it looks cheap, and the only other instance of effects really is when Marvin is bleeding. The blood looks like jelly. So overall, I would recommend this movie. I don't think it is as bad as critics are saying. I gave this movie a 6 out of 8 or a 7.5 out of 10. The antagonist and the effects being the main issues. This is another case of a movie not being perfect but also getting unnecessary hate by the critics. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, make sure to like, subscribe, and comment for more videos like this. I tend to have at least 2 videos out per week, real reviews like this or AI reviews. Until next time.